Hello, and welcome to the Brave New Weed podcast. And now, here's your host, Joe Dolce.
Welcome to the first Brave New Weed podcast of the year 2019. We have a really different sort of format for you this week. Basically, I'm the guest, and Matthew is the interviewer, and we'll explain a little bit more about that as we go forward. But we want to tell you about a new project that I've been working on, and I just thought rather than me trying to tell you myself, it would be better if Matthew asked the questions and I gave the answers. So Matthew, welcome.
How you doing, Joe? Happy New Year.
Thank you. Well, you can hear that I still have a bit of a sinus infection, so that's why I sound sort of nasally and fuzzy.
Yeah,
and,
that's unfortunate.
I just wish that somebody would figure out a way to use cannabis to help things like this, but it seems a ways off, doesn't it?
Well, we talked about it last week. Did you happen to try any CBD oil for your nasal swelling? And
I have
did it help you with any breathing?
Yeah, no, I've been using it all the time, and it doesn't help. Sinus infections are a different beast, I think.
Yeah, we're not really at the fighting bacterial or viral infection stages with cannabis yet.
No, I don't think it's going to be happening.
It's kind of a different beast.
No, we're living in a different world of Mucinex and steaming and salt bathing and
neti pot. Can you
neti potting the sinuses? But this is not the pleasant conversation we want to be having. Let's talk about the news pretty quickly, huh? Let's give a quick rundown.
Well, we're very early in the year, and of course, a lot of the stuff is predictive and looking forward and recapping 2018, but I haven't seen anything yet on any official sales numbers. I did see something that was floating around about now 5 years of legalization in Colorado and what that has meant, but it's all kind of things that have been on the, on par with what we've always talked about. But I thought one of the interesting things is that there were two articles that came across my radar this week in the new year, both coming out of Forbes magazine. And Joe, you and I were talking about this. Forbes has been doing a great job of covering the cannabis space.
Yes, they do it like an investment. They do it because people are interested in cannabis as an investment. So they're quite neutral about it. They don't have a political agenda. They have an investment agenda, which I think is fresh in a way.
Yeah, it definitely comes without bias. The first article that I saw was by Nick Kovacevic. I'm sorry if I butchered your last name, Nick. But he talks about budding cannabis trends to look forward to in 2019. Before I dive into actually what the stuff in the article is, Joe, why don't you give me your predictions for the trends that we will see in 2019 in the world of cannabis?
I think the obvious one is we're going to see much more CBD in the world. There's just going to be more of it. The problem, of course, is going to be still that people don't know how to use it, and that it is, currently it treats everything. So we need to develop a little more rigor as to say this is what it does at this dose, and here's how you use it. And we also need a lot more rigor in the labeling of those products, where they come from, what the milligrams are. Because nothing has been regulated, it's very, very difficult to establish unified systems. So really, I think with CBD, the sooner regulations come on, the better it's going to be for everybody. I think we are going to see more states legalizing. Obviously, this is going to happen. I think, who knows if the Trump administration will wake up to the fact that this is a booming business. I don't know. It's hard to say. They're so disorganized.
I would still not be surprised at all, Joe, if he pulls that out as a trump card for for his second term election, is for him to just nationally legalize.
It's just the obvious thing to do.
But it does seem like a great power play.
But, there's no predicting with this administration, so we don't really know. And I think, the trend looks pretty good. I mean, our contribution, well, I'll talk about our contribution in a bit. What does Forbes have to say?
Yeah, Forbes article definitely mentions legalization as the number one. The oncoming wave that we are seeing now is just going to continue into the future. A couple of the interesting things, and I won't go into all of it. You can check it out on Forbes.com if you're interested. But one of the interesting things that he marked is a trend in the rise of awareness of terpenes. For so long, we've been focused on percentages of THC and even lately percentages of CBD and the ratio between the two. But this idea of people becoming aware of the entourage effect and making their decisions about which cannabis flower they are choosing based off of these minor cannabinoids, these terpenes, these smell and flavor molecules, and playing into that entourage effect as being more impactful for people to shape their high.
Now, if people don't know what terpenes are, the entourage effect, they can look back at one of our earlier podcasts with Dr. Ethan Russo. We've been talking about terpenes ever since we began.
I think even like as early as episode 2 or 3 for us.
They are these potent smell molecules. They're in pharmacological concentration in cannabis, which is why it is such a powerful and enduring odor. And many people, myself included, believe that they direct the high. So, you need them in concentration with some THC, but the nature of that high is obviously going to be affected by how much pinene or limonene is in your plant. There's about 7 major terpenes, which we talk about in that podcast with Ethan, but there's smaller ones in smaller concentrations. So they're really worth paying attention to. And I am positive that as people become more aware of what they are, they will be more, they're just going to be more part of the mix. Really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other piece that he talks about that I think is worth mentioning is the diversification of products that we will see in the future. He makes note that more than 30% of all cannabis sales in California were in the form of vaporization cartridges. So we're diversifying away from whole flower, which has been the traditional form of cannabis for a long time. We're getting into microdose edibles. We're getting into controllable dose vaporization techniques. And it's sort of this idea, I guess, of bringing it under individual and personal control.
Yep. Dosing is key, and I couldn't be more for it. That way you can at least control what you're doing, knowing what you're going to get.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The second article that I think is relevant enough to mention is now that we are in full swing in 2019, the official new cannabis laws of Canada are in effect. And I anticipate that a lot of people, depending on where you are in the United States or even in the rest of the world, might be looking in 2019 to be going to Canada for some cannabis tourism. So I thought it might be relevant if we touch on a couple of these rules so that you don't go and get yourself in trouble.
Give me the top 3.
All right, top 3. Number 1, how about this? If you bring cannabis into Canada and you are caught at the border, you can be arrested for drug trafficking.
What a surprise.
Big shock there, right? That just seems like a no-brainer.
Don't do it.
Number 2, only people who are authorized by the Canadian government can grow and sell cannabis. So if you are not a permanent resident and you are a visitor to Canada and someone attempts to sell you cannabis who is not licensed by the government, or you attempt to grow your own cannabis and you are not licensed by the government, you do face criminal conviction and deportation.
So don't start planting things if you're not a Canadian citizen. Is that the idea?
Right. But, also don't, avoid buying cannabis, even though it's legal, from the guy on the corner, right? Like there are shops for this. It's been set up. It's been licensed. You don't want to get yourself in trouble.
In fact, there are only shops in certain provinces, so you should know where those shops are before you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's also a mail order system, but that's specifically for residents. So I wouldn't try and go there as a visitor and have it like mailed to your hotel room. That doesn't seem like a good idea.
What's the third?
So the third one that I would like to talk about is that you can be stopped if you are operating an automobile and controlled for both alcohol and cannabis. And if you are found to be high while operating a vehicle, it is the same punishments as being drunk while operating a vehicle. It's serious criminal consequences, and you can be jailed or deported from the country.
So what's their method of breath analysis, or how are they measuring intoxication?
Well, we talked about it a few episodes ago, but there are 2 very prominent competing technologies that are marijuana breathalyzers. And I believe the most popular one being adopted in Canada comes from Hound Labs. It's the Hound Labs breathalyzer. I don't know if it has an actual product name, but Hound Labs has developed a marijuana breathalyzer. It tests for particulate amounts of THC on your breath.
So in other words, you will have THC on your breath. So it's used to be, it measures things if you've just recently spoken, right? It's not about measuring your blood.
There's a lot of cool stuff with how this is being implemented, is because this is definitely, it's not a pass-fail test. What happens is if you are stopped, first off, they have to have a reason to suspect that you are impaired with cannabis. And if so, then they can ask you to consent to a breathalyzer test. The breathalyzer that from Hound Labs also tests for alcohol. And we all know that that's a percentage of alcohol on your breath. It works the same way for THC, but due to the nature of the molecule, THC, studies from the company have shown, is basically no longer detectable on your breath after about a 3-hour window. Yeah. So it sort of focuses on this peak impairment time.
Seems to make sense. That seems to make sense to me.
I think it makes a great deal of sense. Basically, in the immediate 1 hour or second hour after smoking marijuana, THC is potent enough and present enough in the particulates of your breath to display a warning off of this system. So the system itself doesn't pass or fail you. If there's no THC, it definitely renders a pass and it says you're fine to go. If it does detect THC, then it delivers to the officer a warning signal. And they go from there into further testing whether or not you appear to be impaired enough to either be, sent on your way safely, or if you would be taken into, a police district and tested further in your blood or perhaps in your urine to make sure that you're not just overly impaired.
Well, it sounds like a sensible system. Canada, the more you read about Canada, the more sensible it sounds, I have to say.
I always sort of thought of Canada as the sensible cousin to America. To most places, really. They just seem much more sensible about how they do many, many things. So this seems great that they're out there. They're trying to keep people safe is the most important part. So, hey, if you want to go to Canada, you want to try some legal cannabis, do so. Fully encouraged. But please, guys, be smart and be safe. Joe and I will continue to publish every episode of the Brave New Weed podcast for free for you, our listeners. But we could always use your support. If you've got a little extra change rattling around in your pocket, you can cruise over to patreon.com/bravenewweed and become a supporter of the show. Everything that you'd pledge to support helps us to increase the guests that we can have on the show, even eventually the frequency of the show. And we have a great set of rewards out there, including copies of Joe's book, invites to special events that we will do in New York City, all sorts of fun things. So if you're enjoying the podcast and you would like to support us, visit patreon.com/bravenewweed today.
So as we mentioned at the top of the hour, our guest this week is me. A couple of months ago, Dr. Junella Chin and I decided we were going to start an online education platform for medical cannabis. Our tagline is education before medication. And in fact, we think that education is key before regulation and legislation at this point, watching what's going on in the world. What we decided to do was look at all of the research from across the world and create an evidence-based course for 3 different populations. One is for healthcare providers, which range from doctors to physical therapists to acupuncturists to wellness coaches. Another is for dispensary workers, because really they are the front line of cannabis, really. People who are sick usually go into a dispensary and want to know from their bud tender or dispensary technician what to get. And I think we all know that the level of education isn't quite as high as it could be. And a lot of companies, to their favor, are actually really encouraging that their workers really learn a lot. The third course is something we've talked about here before, which is called Relief Without the High, which is how to use cannabis with CBD, with little bits of THC in micro doses in order to treat certain illnesses, primarily pain, anxiety, and insomnia. With using very low doses of these medications to get the relief you need. The evidence is clear that they're safer, that they have far fewer side effects, and that they can be used mindfully and in a logical protocol. It's not just take 3 tokes and call me in the morning. So that's my spiel on it. But in order to really tell you about it, Matthew and I decided to switch it up a little. So what you're going to hear is him interviewing me about our new project, which is called medicalcannabismentor.com. Again, it's medicalcannabismentor.com. And if you want to check it out or your business wants to check it out, it's up online. We're launching in early 2019.
Joe, a few episodes back, we made a point to discuss some participation that you had in the Green Flower Media Cannabis Summit, Cannabis 101.
Correct.
And now we're here today to talk about something that is similar to that and has spun off from that, which is something you're calling Medical Cannabis Mentor. Can you explain to me what is Medical Cannabis Mentor?
So, look, here's how this all began. After I wrote Brave New Weed, literally 2 months before the book came out, my right toe exploded. I thought I was bitten by a bee. Okay, like a bee had stung my toe. It turned out I got diagnosed with a condition called gout, which if you know me, you know I'm like the last person in the world to get gout, right? Because I'm not overweight. I exercise like a crazy person. I don't eat red meat, blah, blah, blah. And I don't drink that much, okay? So there I am in the emergency room, and I'm saying to the doctor, you got to get this stinger out of my toe. And he's looking at me like, there is no stinger in your toe, sir. You have gout. Gout really hurts like a mother. Like I couldn't walk for days. I literally had to sit up there, right? And there's nothing you can do for it. You got to wait it out. All right, the boring part of this story is that after I got gout, I got stuck with something called gouty arthritis, which is an arthritic condition of my 2 toes, my 2 large toes, which means they're always swollen, and now it hurts. I don't run anymore, okay? There's just things I can't do. And the other problem is it hurts a lot.
Yeah.
So I went to the doctor. I spent like $4,000 on blood work at Sloan Kettering in New York. Not Sloan Kettering, sorry, another hospital in New York. And they said to me, oh, you've got arthritis, and you can take Advil. And I said, I took this blood work and the prescription is Advil. I've been taking that anyway. It's not so good. And they said, well, opioids are a bit much. And I said, yeah, I'm not doing that. Basically, it was Advil. So, okay, I'm on a book tour. A few months later, I'm in Colorado. I thought, let me try some CBD.
Okay. Yeah,
Let me try this. It's like, I know that it's anti-inflammatory. I hear it's good for pain. Let me just try it this way. So I bought a bunch of different products. Again, I have to tell you, I spent hundreds of dollars on random products, right? Trying this, trying that, trying this, trying that. Ultimately, I learned that really 25 milligrams of CBD twice a day with a little tiny bit of THC microdosing, like 2.5 milligrams, enables me to work and function and mitigate the pain. I mean, I have a pretty normal life. I can't wear every shoe that I used to wear, but my life is pretty good, all right? And that really prompted me to think, wait a second, there's something here. There's this thing, relief without the high. This is what got me going on this, all right? I wanted to share with people all this information I learned in the process of learning how to dose myself to get rid of this very annoying chronic pain condition. In the process of that, this is a very long answer to the question, but in the process, I also learned that high CBD, low THC meds are very effective for treating stress/anxiety and insomnia. Equals anybody over 40 is going to want to know this, right?
Especially in today's world.
Especially in our world, especially if you live in an urban setting. Just really over 40, you're probably going to have pain, insomnia, stress, all 3 or any combination thereof. So I decided what I'm going to do is write an online learning course, and that was what became known as Relief Without the High. However, while doing that, I thought, you know what? There's other people who really could benefit from learning about medical cannabis. Some of them are medical professionals.
Yeah, doctors, right?
Yes, I think doctors could benefit, but I think doctors are the last population to do this. They're really busy. It's a whole other field. It takes a lot of effort. You got to really want to learn about it. However, nurses, health coaches, holistic practitioners, healers, that whole realm of doctor alternatives will be very interested in using botanical medicines, especially because the safety profile of cannabis is so extraordinary, right? It will not kill you, period, end of story, never has anybody. So I decided to create a course for medical professionals, which is called Cannabis Therapeutics. That's actually the first course that is going to launch on the Medical Cannabis Mentor site. The second course will be Relief Without the High for patients who want to use cannabis meds and self-treat and self-dose and develop a personalized treatment plan for themselves, which we can do very easily with a little education. The third course will be for people who work in the industry, dispensary workers, because medical is going to be a big deal. And the people, when you walk into a dispensary and you have a real pain condition or a real condition, and you're looking at a very young person,
Sure.
And you're going to talk about something that may be very private, or you may not really feel like sharing, you need to know that that person is worthy of your confidence.
Right. Yeah. Hippie Dave in the dispensary in Colorado is not a pharmacist,
Well, I'm not looking for a pharmacist, but I know that there are certain things. I've been in dispensaries. Sometimes I've had fantastic experiences. Other times those experiences are less than fantastic. And there has to be a sort of a uniformity of service over time that is going to be developed. And I want to be contributing to that. Okay. So Medical Cannabis Mentor is an education platform for these three very different populations. And it will launch, hopefully, the first course, Cannabis Therapeutics for Medical Professionals, will launch in July. And then subsequently, through the summer and through the fall, I will be able to upload the content and create these other courses. So I guess what I want to say is, I've looked at a lot of cannabis education courses, and they're pretty dry. They're pretty dull.
Yeah,
They're not really meant to engage your attention.
Yeah, what jumps to mind is like prescription drug protocol. If you were a doctor trying to prescribe something, and it's just
It's a bunch of lectures. Yeah, they're poorly filmed. It's lectures. They go on for a really long time. I tried to create something engaging and interesting and graphically modern. I tried to create. I mean, I did spend most of my dumb career as a magazine editor. I have a little bit of skill of trying to engage readers and audiences, and I tried to also mix in new formats like motion animation or using narrated PowerPoints, and hopefully I'll be able to actually create an audio of the entire course so people can actually listen to it as a podcast. So I'm trying to make it modern as new cannabis is. And engaging, and that's why I launched Medical Cannabis Mentor. It's a very long answer to that question.
Sure. Let's get a little bit more granular. You've talked about this coming in form of courses, and I think a lot of people have taken maybe some online courses or something like that. How are these going to break down? For instance, you mentioned Cannabis Therapeutics was going to be the first one. How does it break down? Is this going to be like a long form lecture that I'm going to watch and consume, or
no? It's nothing as long form. It's divided into 11 or 12 classes. Each class on a different topic. So there's the history of medical cannabis. There's how to dose it. There's the different delivery systems you use. And then there's specific conditions, how you would treat it. And there's a case study. The first case study, for example, is on insomnia. The medical director of this program is Dr. Junella Chin, who has been a guest on the Brave New Weed podcast and who I basically fell in love with because she's such a compelling and reasonable, rational, salt of the earth person and doctor, and highly educated and super bright, and a pain patient herself.
Yeah.
So she has agreed to be the medical director, which is a fantastic combination. She brings to it she's treated over 10,000 patients with medical cannabis. So she's one of the most experienced, quote unquote, cannabis physicians operating probably in the world. at this point. I would say, one of the top 100, if not more. So she has great clinical experience, and she's providing case studies. So in this case, for medical practitioners, they can actually see, hey, this woman suffered from insomnia. This woman took all of these other pharmaceuticals, and the side effects were this, and she wasn't happy. It wasn't working. Here's what we used. Here's how we implemented cannabis. Here's how we changed the dose to help her. Here's what she's doing today. Here's what it works for. Here's what it doesn't work for. One of the other chapters we did on medical is on where risks and contraindications, where it doesn't work. Because it's not a miracle. And it does require a lot of adjustment. And, it's not as easy as here, take these pills that the pharmaceutical company has brought to your office and educated you about.
But this is the way to get educated.
This is another way of the line that we put on Medical Cannabis Mentor is education before medication. Because with medical cannabis, you really have to learn a few things.
Yeah, I mean, it's very logical.
It's logical, but it's not as... I mean, some of the smartest people I know take whatever medicine the doctor gives them. That's just the way we're taught.
Well, that's what doctors are for.
That's what they're for. And that's how patients are supposed to behave. This is different.
Yeah.
With medical cannabis, this. You have to play and you have to fiddle and you have to chart your progress. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, I took too much. That was uncomfortable that day. Oh, I didn't get enough. I didn't get enough relief. The problem is if you don't know that and you say you do take too little, you might just give up saying this didn't work. As opposed to, let's escalate that dose a little bit. Let's escalate it and escalate it and escalate it more, right? So it does take some fiddling and futzing. I think it's about, if you're going to self-diagnose, I think it's 60 to 90 days before you're solid. Like, this is the protocol I'm going to use.
Right, because sort of finding what's right for you.
Yeah, you really have to refine it.
Yeah, getting your own physiology involved and testing that stuff out.
The other reason I got inspired to do this is that the range of products and quality of products and price of products right now in the pre-legal market is all over the board.
Boy, don't I know it.
It is super hard to make good critical purchase decisions unless, again, you've really spent some time looking into it. So we will actually be saying, hey, we really like Green Mountain CBD. We really like this product, that product. We have tried vaporizers. We like the Firefly, the Crafty, the Mighty. We like these products, and here's why we like them. So part of it is a consumer report, will be more going forward. Right now, the goal is get the courses up, get the word out, see if we can get some feedback on what works, what doesn't work. Is it too long? Is it too short? Is it appealing enough? Is it giving the audience what the audience really needs?
And the first one is geared specifically for healthcare professionals.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that Dr. Chin is then the authority. I mean, you obviously, you wrote Brave New Weed. You have a lot of intrinsic experience in this field, but having that doctor, is that the reason for getting Dr. Chin involved, is for the validity element?
Yes and no. The validity, every claim made in the course is cited.
Oh,
there
great.
Are hundreds, maybe upwards of 600, maybe more, 800 research citations. So anybody who wants to go deeper into any topic, click, hyperlink, you see it. You see the abstract, you see the publication. Okay? So that I was absolutely certain had to be buttoned up, sewn up, and will be updated regularly as well. Dr. Chin is really for the clinical side of this, for the clinical experience. A lot of researchers are not clinicians. So information is not as applicable. And I really want to be practical. I really want to enable practitioners to have a smart conversation with patients and have a framework, a foundation for if they want to learn more. Here's where you could learn more. Maybe there will be a part 2 and a part 3 to this. I can't quite think about that yet, but that's where we're beginning. Everything is foundational.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people who are listening to the podcast are may or may not be, I'm guessing many of them are not in the medical profession. So is that where would they get involved? Is that the second?
The second course will be Relief Without the High. And yes, that's how they can get access to that information. which will give them a course. You follow these rules, you follow this formula, and you will be able to use different medications in different quantities at different times of the day to achieve relief without the high. Again, it's only for 3 conditions: pain, stress and anxiety, and insomnia.
Okay, you guys aren't getting into...
It is very limited. No, because these are the conditions that are most popular for cannabis, where cannabis has shown to be highly effective, as effective, if not more effective, than any over-the-counter or prescription medication.
Wow, that's incredibly interesting information.
With no side effects.
Yeah.
Or moderate, side effects that you can manage and feel quite comfortable.
Yeah, or for some people even enjoy said side effects.
Yes, as a matter of fact, yes.
There's nothing wrong with a little enjoyment too.
Well, I mean, this is specifically relief without the high, because I'm one of those people who cannot work when I'm high.
Yeah, sure. And that's
I think a lot of people have to function every day at optimal speed. Some people can do it. I can't, and I'm assuming a lot of people like me who have to do whatever task, linear or surface task, cannot do it. And there are many other professions where it's just not advisable. So, come on. I mean, we don't drink all day long, right? So,
yeah, well, and if you did, you definitely you shouldn't be working in certain
You're not going to be a writer like I am who needs to go linearly, right? So, boom. That's why I did it this way. Okay? I mean, to get relief with a high, it's not so hard to figure out.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
This is a more prescriptive approach.
Can you take me through a very interesting thing that you may have discovered in this research, something that jumped out at you? I know that you've done a lot of work in this field, but was there anything as you've dove in so deeply, is there anything that's jumped out that maybe you learned that was new, that is like, hey, this is the value point?
I learned so much doing it. I mean, once you realize how rational it is, and once you realize that, okay, if I'm taking 25 milligrams of CBD and I'm not getting what I want, I can add these tiny amounts of THC, like 2.5 milligrams per 25, right? That's a 1 to 10 ratio. And you can amplify the effect of that CBD so much that it becomes a more powerful substance. That's really interesting, the fact that these two molecules, these work together synergistically. I mean, I wrote in the course, they're like Betty Davis and Joan Crawford. They fight each other, but they actually get along best when they're together, and that they can mitigate the effects. I mean, I've now tried using equal numbers of THC and CBD together, for example, like a 1-to-1 ratio. I really like it.
Yeah.
And history shows that really that's what the plant was before before prohibition, and the breeders started breeding out the CBD because it wasn't making people as high.
More punch, smaller package.
And I think as we go on, of course, I think especially people our age, 40 above, will really like that sort of psychoactivity if they like psychoactivity. Mm-hmm. That 1-to-1 ratio is a balanced, easy to manage, sort of happy, what do I want to say, ratio.
Yeah. No, I can speak from personal experience that the balancing of CBD with THC has been very beneficial for me as well, because you do get a nice high experience, but it is very controllable. It is very manageable, and in a lot of ways, it just becomes a lot more enjoyable. You don't get as couch locked as often. These sorts of negative things.
I also learned a lot about. Receptor signaling. I mean, I learned really sort of scientific wonky things, like how these things actually attach to receptors. Like I always thought a receptor is actually a place on a cell wall, but it isn't. I mean, it's an entryway. Right. It's an electronic charge that sort of happens. It's very vague. It's very abstract. It takes a lot of sort of rumination and thinking about as to how these things are working. And, you get to that point where you go, my God, once again, the miracle of the human body, when you realize that, a cell membrane, what it is and how these different compounds have this effect. It's very interesting. If you're I was at one point a biology major, so it sort of comes back to that I find very interesting, very stimulating. So there's that wonky side, there's the practical side, there's also the historical side.
Do you go very in depth into that stuff in the class?
I go enough in depth so that if anybody's really interested, they can see it.
Because I'm a super science wonk.
Oh, well, you'll love the animations. I actually got a fantastic medical illustration team in Romania. This is one of those amazing things where I was Googling medical illustration, and I happen to know that the Romanians are fantastic technicians. It's a highly educated population, and they speak English better than most Americans. And we have a great time difference. So I was able to say, okay, you do this. I'll see you in the morning with the final results. And the illustrations, the medical illustrations on this site are really stunning, really, really stunning. And I'm so happy to have worked with that company. I learned so much from them, actually. So we go into it in some detail. It isn't like going to medical school. I talked to a lot of doctors, a lot of clinicians. They all said to me, don't make this like medical school. We did it once. We don't want to do that again.
Right. It needs to be a little bit more
We want this to be fun, interesting. We want to be able to take the course in 3 or 4 hours. We want to learn, and we want to learn a lot. And we want to have something to go back to.
How is the interfacing going to be operated? I mean, are you going to have to go through it linearly? Can you jump around? Is it going to be? Is this something like
you can take each class
on the website?
Yeah, it's in a learning platform. You can take each class as it goes. Eventually, for the medical people, it will be CME certified, so they'll actually get credit towards extending their license. That's very important. I'm hoping to get same certification for nurses and any other professional organization that requires that. The thing for the workers in the dispensary is that course will have some state-specific information, like if you're in this state, these are the qualifying conditions. This is what you're able to do. This is what you're not able to do. Everything will have what federal law requires, what state law requires.
That stuff is probably super important. And I imagine that a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm going to go get a job in a dispensary and I'll be a bud tender, don't think about any of that stuff ever.
And right now, by law, they don't have to. So but I am convinced, and I know for sure, as a matter of fact, as this stuff becomes more standardized and standards get set, bud tenders are going to have to be more educated.
As well it should. I mean, the same thing is true for bartenders.
That's true.
If you're a bartender in the state of New York, you have to know the liquor laws. So it's got to be the same kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a little more specific when it gets to medical condition. But bud tenders are not by law allowed to recommend product, which is an excellent law. They're only allowed to say, I hear that this may be effective.
This does this. This does
I hear,
that.
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Cool. All of this sounds like an incredible amount of work. And from what I know about things online, people who do a lot of work tend to get paid for that stuff. How is that going to factor into the launching of the medical cannabis mentor site?
The courses cost money. There is a fee. There is a fee attached. Yes. It's not free.
Is it going to be like a one-off? Can I go and just consume one class, or am I going to need to sign up and have a subscription and I can get all of it? How is the functional model going to work?
Each course has a fee.
All right. So what is the site? Obviously, you haven't launched yet. What's the timetable look like for this to be available for members of the public?
So Medical Cannabis Mentor is online. You can sign up if you want information, and we'll be giving you information as the courses come on. Okay?
Wonderful.
I have made it my personal obligation to create each course myself. I went to basically to write that book, Brave New Weed. I went to Cannabis University for 3 years. Okay, and I have the relationships with the top people in the field that I felt that I should stay connected with and bring state-of-the-art information where I can. So I'm doing the work myself, putting it together. It's being read and reviewed by a few peers, whose names will be listed as their reviews come in. And it will be updated regularly as well. So right now, the program is we will launch Cannabis Therapeutics in the summer, and then the next 2 courses will follow probably again in summer/fall. Okay. That's the timeline. But if anybody's interested in any of those courses, if you go on to medicalcannabismentor.com right now, you can sign up. We'll have your name. We'll hold it. We'll keep you appraised of what's going on as it continues to go on.
Well, I definitely look forward into diving into all this information. It really sounds great, and it sounds like a wonderful resource for anyone out there who is on any side of the cannabis.
Well, good. I'm going to make you one of the first readers then.
I'll do it.
Thank you, Matthew.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Joe. You can like and follow the Brave New Weed podcast on all the best social media platforms. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/bravenewweed, or on Twitter @bravenewweed, or Instagram @bravenewweed. I personally want to thank you, Joe, for taking the time to sit down and talk with me and our listeners, really, to go over Medical Cannabis Mentor. I think that as someone who, like myself, who is just a fan of the plant, who is very interested in the plant, who is a patient of the plant, I don't necessarily fall into the direct categories, but I think that there's so much that I'm going to be able to garner from the website as well. It just seems like a useful resource for people. And I know that in doing this podcast and in speaking to our listeners and in answering listener email, we just get these kind of questions all the time.
Yeah, I want to actually, I'm hoping that we can do a more regular segment on medical cannabis going forward, because it's clear that, the population is aging. Anybody over 40 is going to have one of those three conditions. And it's really important that we show people how to use this stuff, so that not only to educate people, but to make sure they're getting the best results they can. What happens a lot is people will try something, they'll use the wrong dosage, the wrong delivery system, and they won't get the relief they need. So they'll just say, oh, that didn't work. So I think it's best for everything and everybody, and for the plant itself, to give it, the best shot, what research says works, and then everybody has a baseline from which they can proceed.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I mean, even from the entertainment side of things, from the personal enjoyment side of things, I don't ever blindly put anything into my body. If I'm out at a party, or even if I'm hanging out with friends that I know well and somebody passes me something, I always want to know, well, what is it? How strong is it? How much should I take? Is this going to lay me out, or is it going to make me bounce off the walls? Like, I want to know all these things. And people look at me really strange, and I kind of have to explain then that, oh yeah, I'm a co-host on this podcast and it's all about cannabis. And so, I'm very hyper aware of this stuff. But inevitably somebody turns to me and says, hey, I know about your podcast, and I was wondering, my mother has X condition and she's been really dealing with pain. Can you recommend something? And I'm like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to do the wrong thing. I don't want to give bad advice to people. And I probably know just enough to be dangerous to someone if I could say it with the right inflection, they would probably believe me. But I don't want to do that. And I know that we don't want to do that as a podcast as well. So that's why I think something like Medical Cannabis Mentor is going to be super, super, super helpful.
So just to be clear, the Relief Without the High course will be coming out sometime in Q1 2019. It's not up yet.
So Joe, I heard that you are going to be in Denver.
It's great. We've been invited to go and check out the scene there, talk to business leaders, politicians, as to what's really going on. It's been 5 years since I first laid foot in Denver, and it was the very first day, I think, of legalization when I was there. So it'd be very interesting to see what's going on, how things are going, how things are working, what isn't working, et cetera, et cetera. And that will be going towards the end of January and probably broadcasting in February.
Great. I'm super looking forward to everything. I'm very saddened by the fact that I will not be able to join you. I have, as listeners may or may not know, have recently relocated to Leipzig, Germany. So it's a bit further of a flight for me than it is for you, I think, and a little bit cost prohibitive at this time. But I'll tell you what, I can't wait to hear all the great conversations that you have, and I can't wait to integrate them into the podcast.
There we go. Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks for listening to the Brave New Weed podcast. This episode and all future episodes are made possible by amazing listeners like yourself. If you like what you've heard, we encourage you to show your support by giving $1 a month for special access and rewards on patreon.com/bravenewweed. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram via @bravenewweed. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/bravenewweed. And remember, you can always find more information about us or information discussed in each episode by pointing your favorite browser to bravenewweed.com.